The question that I wanted to really put here, Derrick, is because it's been a while that the global markets were just looking at 7 stocks in the United States, and they ran so hard in that one direction. Is this the whole tariff situation or the fiscal situation in the United States? Are they strong of a catalyst enough for the whole global world to change their thinking and approach and really look at EM with a serious money?
I think they'll have to. I think that they will be cautious at first. Obviously, the other side of the trade war is China, and China's a big piece. But keep in mind, China and some of the big Asian tech companies have also done very, very well. And I think that as the Magnificent Seven in the U.S. come off, it may underscore some of the resilience of some of the big Asian names, whether it's TSMC or Alibaba, relative to the Magnificent Seven and the great valuations. So I think there's room there. Your question on the dollar and the fiscal deficit in the U.S. and is that enough? I actually think the big important piece for global investors is, do they still trust the preeminence of the United States? Does that exorbitant privilege, as they say, still exist after the trauma of the last few months with regard to global security and global trade?
And I think a lot of people would say the answer is, well, that trust may still be there, but it's very quickly eroding. Derrick, real quickly, LATAM. As an EM, I noticed that area has been largely or relatively unscathed by tariffs. I mean, you've got the baseline 10%, yeah, but nothing really on top of that. Is that an area where you see opportunities, especially in EM LATAM debt?
Sure. I think that was a huge surprise for everyone. I think when we were all doing our analysis last year of how tariffs might play out, certainly Mexico was in the crosshairs, and relatively speaking, I think it emerged pretty unscathed. And certainly Brazil, as the other large economy, was also a positive surprise. I think there's a lot to like. I think Brazil, for instance, our analysts were just down in Brazil last week visiting with companies, and they came away with a reasonable positive view on the earnings momentum of some of these companies, how well these companies are managing what is a fairly high interest rate environment. So I think relative to expectation, Brazil's in a pretty good place, and Mexico, we'll see. I think there's a little more tariff noise likely there, and of course they are very tied to the U.S. economy. And should the U.S. economy move into recession, I think it'll be very hard for Mexico to grow. But I think so. We'll have to balance between the tariff noise and U.S. economic growth for Mexico.
Derrick, you gave us some stock picks, and just because Mark Mobius was on and he picked India as his favorite, I do want to get into one of the picks, which is Reliance Industries. I get that there are some cases to be made, but some of the bearish people out there are pointing out high capex as a potential problem, potentially straining liquidity. Just walk us through your thinking around this particular stock, and how much upside are you talking about?
Sure. Look, Reliance has struggled through 2024 at a time when the rest of the Indian market was performing very, very well. And I think with good reason. As you pointed out, they've been spending a lot of money in their retail business and, of course, significant capex on the refining side. And so I think there was some skepticism for what sort of returns is Reliance going to get on these businesses. And I would say 2 things. One, the strategy around their retail business is very, very solid. I think they've made the right changes to that business in terms of rationalizing the store base and whatnot through 2024 to set them up for a pretty good environment for that business to show good earnings growth. You're right. We have seen a lot of capex elsewhere in the business. The refining business will need to fill up its capacity. But I think that Reliance has shown over time they're very good at that. I can't tell you the number of times that I've met with Reliance management and questioned them about capex and felt that they were spending too much money on capex. And 5 years later, I was wrong, and they've made a great investment. Certainly, their mobile phone business is a good example of that, or communications business.